Hello, my name is Margaret Gratz Reynolds, and today I will present a case study of rewards and costs and public perception of enrollment at Youngstown State University. I will begin with a statement of the problem, looking through a literature review of the national context. I will also discuss the concepts of how I used the social exchange theory, leading me into my first research question, doing a qualitative content analysis, leading me further into a quantitative content analysis, further discussing the results of both, as well as discussion that led me to the future research and in the development of a consumer survey. So let's begin with a statement of the problem. The case of YSU brings us all the way back to the Enrollment Master Plan in decline from 2000 through 2013. I quote from Youngstown State University Enrollment Master Plan Appendix E-139 in the year 2000. In December 2002, President David Sweet appointed the Enrollment Management Council charged with the responsibility of developing a comprehensive enrollment management plan. You know, during these years, the university felt it was important enough to devise a master plan, not only to look at the multiple variables that play a part in the enrollment decline, but also to take a look at the economic value that the university was bringing to the entire Mahoning Valley. This brings me to a series of assumptions regarding the enrollment decline for YSU, dating all the way back to the fall of 2000. You know, the problem is of value. The issue is of rewards and costs. Another quote coming from the Youngstown State University Enrollment Master Plan, Index E-139, I quote, "Sustained management, sustained managed enrollment growth is critical in the future of YSU in order for the university to fulfill our mission and to increase the level of educational attainment necessary to the economic recovery of the Mahoning Valley." This leads us back again to rewards and costs. Looking through the literature, the national context, I found a lot of research. According to Kincaid in 2013, quote, "The cost of a college education is having a depressing effect on Americans across the nation." In addition to this depressing lifestyle and consumer spending, student debt also plays significant roles in larger financial and personal commitments. Again, we're looking at rewards and costs. Overall, attending college is an investment of not only money, but time. Making a decision that will pay off in the long term can be very difficult, but it's definitely not impossible. The return on investments for the students that are planning to enroll in Youngstown State University is a serious decision that's not only affecting them personally, but affects us as a community at large. Leading into my next section of the social exchange theory. Social Exchange 2003 states that the major exchange concepts can be classified as rewards, costs, and resources. Exchange theories use the concepts of rewards and costs and resources when discussing or researching the foundation of an interpersonal exchange, much like students and the university, the parents checking out the university, and then the exchange of the university helping this area in an economic condition. Resources are more likely to be commodities that are material or symbolic. They're conveyed through interpersonal behavior and give one person capacity to reward another person. Social exchange theory is much like when dealing with a student in a university. The resource aspect can be viewed as that diploma. It also can be looked at as the resourcefulness as staff and faculty of this university aiding and assisting a student to become job ready or help them bridge the gap into career possibilities. When a student views satisfaction with an exchange relationship, it is derived partially from the evaluation or calculation of outcomes. So looking at the rewards versus costs, according to the decline in enrollment numbers, strains, budgets, operations 2013's, schools that depend on tuition payments for a greater portion of their operating budgets are already showing strain. As high prices rise, question whether a college education remains a can't-miss investment for everyone. Institutions of higher education have been spending and charging students, parents, and taxpayers for forevermore for the college education. So this study will take an in-depth look at the marketing and media coverage with regards to the enrollment at Youngstown State University. It will look at the relationship, the student-university relationship, the rewards, costs, and resources affecting the decline in enrollment. All in all, the significant focus on costs related to the enrollment decline at Youngstown State University may impair the perception that a college degree at a school is worth the investment. The media may actually make that particularly seem less attractive. We all know how the media likes to push things, to stretch the truth, if I may. Therefore, I pose the first research question that will be addressed using a qualitative analysis of news coverage. My first research question is, what trends are discovered in the positive, negative, and neutral comments from the news stories about YSU's declining enrollment? Let's take a look at what we have. Looking at the comments made in the community's newspaper using a positive and negative point of view showed a lot of strengths and weaknesses. You know, YSU has a huge journey ahead of them, and by putting in specific changes in the enrollment, they can reflect a positive campus community rather than everybody looking at it in a negative light. For the qualitative analysis, comments were studied from the Vindicator's website to discuss what efforts are being conducted by YSU. I will use a listening strategy and opinions of what people say about the place, the product, the person, or the service that they are receiving from Youngstown State University. According to Williams' 2013, businesses also use a listening strategy to ensure they fully understand the whole message, not just the content, but the motivation behind what's being said, the circumstances around what they're conversing, even what gets left out of the conversation. This brings me to my second research question. What are the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities regarding enrollment, rewards, and costs of education and/or funding at YSU? In this study, I took a look at the local articles that were written on the enrollment decline of 2012. Some of them did consist of a few articles from 2013. In total, there were 80 comments. 17 of those comments were from the Vindicator articles in 2012, and 63 of them were from the comments in 2013. In order to analyze what was expressed, the comments were copied and pasted into a 3-column chart that was labeled categories of reward, positive, cost, negative, neutral, neither, positive or negative categories. From reviewing the comments of the news articles from 2012 and 2013, the decrease in enrollment at YSU, there were some major themes that I found there. The findings weren't surprising to me. Looking at these comments through the lens of the social exchange theory, the commenters were really missing the mark. They weren't even looking at any type of exchange relationship whatsoever. Some of the key themes that were found, they wanted to blame things that the enrollment decline on, that tuition was too high, or the president was doing one thing, the board of trustees was doing another, or that the Vindicator as a whole was just completely biased about what they write about the university. Another theme that was discovered would be coming up with solutions, something to help the university. I mean, as a public, as a community, why not help the largest economic source in our vicinity? So the solutions or exchange in relationships can bring new opportunities to YSU's problem with the enrollment decline. If we look into finding a solution, which is very important, we had a lot of, again, positive and negative comments about the university. However, one commenter suggests YSU must find an identity similar to Kent through the creation of doctoral programs or higher standards for their employees. You know, this commenter has a really good point. However, didn't do any of his research. YSU already offers a few doctorate degrees. And in conclusion, YSU needs to find a unique approach to stand out from the crowd and attract outsiders to the university. One commenter posted a comment regarding how the other facilities market and advertise themselves, where YSU, they use the media outlets less frequently. You know, they say on the Cleveland channels, and I quote from one commentator, "On the Cleveland channels, I see Kent State, University of Akron, and even Bowling Green ads. On the Erie and Pennsylvania stations, I see Edinboro University, Robert Morris, Gannon, Slippery Rock, but not one YSU advertisement." He says he's not a marketing guru, but he did receive a marketing degree from Youngstown State University. He goes on talking back all the way to the state of Youngstown strategy and locked down a 75-mile radius around Youngstown. YSU is as good as any of the mentioned university, he states, and is by far the cheapest of them all. Looking at the actual news coverage that I looked at in the quantitative content analysis leads me to the third research question stemming from part 1 of this research study. In the news coverage of the enrollment decline at YSU, does the regional news focus more on rewards or costs? Well, you heard in the qualitative analysis the method that I used, the sample and unit of analysis that I used in the quantitative method were the news stories that I had already priorly used in the qualitative portion. And what I did, I specifically grabbed those news stories. I included indications to the beliefs of what is appealing to students, parents, and community, or what stood to be improved, increased, gained, or enriched in articles focusing on YSU. Costs included paragraphs that concentrated on negative or undesirable outcomes, what stood to be decreased, lost, or damaged, and other disadvantages to students and parents and the community in articles about YSU's enrollment. Two coders were acquainted with the purpose of the study, each study, and they coded each paragraph of each article. Overall, the coders were reliable at 89% agreement. The frequency and percentage of the target of each paragraph, which we will now look at, looks like this. The first part of this we will discuss is the frequency and percentage of news coverage that is reward versus cost framed. As we look at this chart, we see that the agreement, again, was 89%, so that is good reliability. Here we see that the majority of our comments are cost framed, which means that they were negative. We looked at the reward frame. It's not too far behind, but we see that the media's lens causes respondents or commentators to respond negatively towards YSU. When the frequency of the percentage of the target of each paragraph at YSU, we looked at YSU as the institution. Right here, we're looking at the target. The target, we also did a frequency on what was discussed most in those news stories. We're looking at YSU as the institution as a whole, being in first place with over 66, almost 67%. YSU president was also looked at, the YSU students, the faculty, administrators, alumni, the community as a whole, which was very surprising. There was 0 talked about the community as a whole, and other there were none. When we broke that down even further, and we looked at the frequency and percentage of the topics discussed. Now back here, we can see that YSU, the institution, was the largest in every single news story. Well here, over 55.6%, which is almost 56%, the frequency and percentage of that particular topic was number 1. We then looked at tuition, employee compensation, employees' jobs, university services, state support, federal support, financial security, debt, and any other, which would have been something that was not listed on the coding scheme. Overall, looking at the frequency here, we can see that the majority of the news articles were about the enrollment decline. This leads me to a discussion. What comes next? The frames that are found in these news articles can be very powerful. According to Nelson, Oxley, and Clausen, 1997, I quote, "Frames make issues salient, activate beliefs, and lead individuals to place more weight on certain considerations than others. People think in terms of frames, and by giving them facts, that can cause them to be persuaded either in a positive way or a negative way. Additionally, by finding the content contained in the article, majority we saw in the chart was negative. It can increase the decisions of future students, parents, as well as the community. All of this put together can cause an even deeper damaging result when it comes to YSU's enrollment decline." This leads me into future research in the final portion of this case study. The news coverage of YSU and comments of the enrollment stories were significantly negative. To look into what can come about this, I think that a little more research should be conducted. The comments of the sections of the news articles show the opinions of a self-selected cross-section of the public that is served by this university. Therefore, in the third and final phase, a survey will have to be administered to the people of the Youngstown area. That's to get feedback about the perceived awards, cost, and return on investment for enrolling students at YSU. To consider how incoming students, parents, and community feel about the enrollment decline, I propose that a survey be distributed This will be only for the sole purpose of looking to the YSU's consumer base, consisting of people that are currently living in the Mahoning Valley. The survey will consist of 3 different parts: a semantic differential measure of people's perceptions about the cost of attending YSU, a Likert scale about funding assistance available to YSU students, and a Likert scale focused on the awareness associated with enrolling in YSU. The 4th and final research question that I've come up with is, will the way the participant is affiliated with YSU affect their perception about the current enrollment decline? The sample, like I previously stated, is going to be conducted. I would propose it to be conducted with people that are familiar with the university. It doesn't necessarily have to be current or former students. I'd like the electronic survey to be distributed via current YSU students or people around Youngstown. YSU is a regional university, and it's primarily of commuter students from greater Youngstown area. Though it's not a random sample of the population, it will be the best means available to reach people outside of the university to collect perceptions of YSU's enrollment decline. Using this method will make it possible to collect responses from people who are potentially incoming students, and also from people who may have a positive influence on decisions of potential students, such as parents or grandparents, to gauge the perceptions of YSU. In collecting data, 100 people is the goal to complete the electronic survey. The first part will be the semantic differential measure of value. It will be a 7-point semantic differential scale in a way to measure people's perceptions of YSU's tuition. The bipolar adjectives used in the 8-measure item assessed will be tuition at YSU compared to other universities in Northeast Ohio on the following dimensions: high, low, reasonable, unreasonable, expensive, inexpensive, good value, rip-off, appropriate, inappropriate, realistic, unrealistic, necessary and unnecessary, and finally, not worth it or worth it. The scale will be factor analyzed to help determine if multiple dimensions are being represented. The alpha reliability will need to be calculated for this set to determine if the questions being asked are all measuring the same variable. Alpha reliability will help potentially highlighting certain measurements that do not calculate the participants' perceptions of YSU's rise in tuition and safety. In this case, the low reliability questions will be modified or taken out of the survey completely, and then the measure will be determined again. We will have 2 sets of Likert measure of funding, and 1 set of Likert measure of funding and 1 Likert measure of outcomes. Our method of analysis, and it's really ultimately the goal of this project to describe the people's perception of the cost and value. Again, enrolling in and attending YSU, we're looking at the cost and rewards, the return on their investment. Given the local and national focus of ROI, student debt, and choosing the college that offers the best value to students, the goal with these measures is to explore people's current perceptions of whether YSU provides a good product at a good price in a safe environment with adequate student activities and resources. To investigate these perceptions, 3 statistic tests will be used. First, a correlational analysis will be used to study whether perceived value, perceived funding opportunities, and whether people feel that the investment is worth it and well spent at YSU. Correlations will explain whether these variables are linked or associated to one another. Second, This survey will be administered to both current students at YSU and people not associated with the university. And ANOVA will be utilized to compare perceptions of YSU's tuition, campus resources, and activities, as well as campus safety, and overall, the community attitude between these two groups. The ANOVA will help in discovering differences among answers due to participants' current affiliation and with the university or community. Results from the ANOVA can also be used to rank groups found within the demographic area. These groups can be used to help further understand specific response trends among certain individuals regarding perceptions, such as YSU's enrollment decline, tuition, competition with other universities, as well as campus safety in the local news media. This is where research question 4 will be answered. After implementing the ANOVA measure results, this can be compared by group to determine if the participants' affiliation to YSU affects their overall perception of the enrollment decline at YSU. Last and not least, because we're looking for future research here, is regression. The regression will be used to explore whether people's relationships to YSU have perceived value and if perceived funding, if they're related to the opinions of the outcomes related to the enrollment and tuition at YSU. A regression will reveal how much of the variance in outcomes, like the return on investment, are explained by the perceived comparative costs of attending YSU and knowledge of funding opportunities at Youngstown State University. This concludes my case study on the enrollment decline of 2013 at Youngstown State University.